Welcome into a fresh new episode of Hills on the Diamond, which is presented by Hills on Franklin. I got my friend with me, Andrew, here, and it was a little bit of a tough weekend this past series for Carolina baseball, and a little bit too for Carolina softball. But also saw some signs of definitely signs of fight there in the final game in Game 3 from Carolina softball. Carolina baseball is sitting at 14-3-1, and softball is sitting at 19-3. Unfortunately, right now we're not able to stream on Twitter, which is also supposedly called X. For some reason, the platform that we use every time that we stream is not letting us push over to X for some reason. So if you do have a Twitter account, we've put out a tweet asking people to join us over here. And so do us a favor and hop on over. Well, you can't listen on X, so you can't hop over right now. But just go ahead and join us, wherever you're listening from. We really appreciate it. Do us a favor, like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can go and follow us over on Spotify as well. Andrew, how are we doing, my guy?
Good. Quickly trying to throw out some tweets, getting the link out there. So hopefully get some people in here in a few minutes.
Yeah, we have one. Usually we have like 150 people.
Yeah.
Per
There's
episode.
two. There we go.
There's two. Yeah. So they're
surely
slowly trickling in tonight with us not being able to stream on Twitter for some odd reason. So I thought Elon Musk was supposed to fix a lot of things with Twitter, but I don't know about you.
Hey,
but,
so I was on the way to work today. The radio show I listened to, they brought him up and they said he'll be the first trillionaire in the world ever. So hey, put some of that money here, man. What are we doing? Like, this should be working.
I know this should definitely be working, and we got to get the spamming and the message boxes figured out too. Those are out of control.
Yeah.
But Andrew, how are we feeling about this post weekend from Carolina baseball? Let's start there.
Up and down. Felt a little bit like a roller coaster. The game that the two games I expected to have a really good chance in, they ended up losing. And the game that I said, hey, Virginia may snag one, is the one we won. So it was a bit of an up and down series. I'm just glad in the end they salvaged the game. But hoping for better pitching this weekend and some more runs.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So we got a big series coming up this weekend. Both teams, Carolina baseball and softball, have made their way to the West Coast. Both of them flew out, I believe, together actually on the same plane. Made their way to California. So I believe they actually have landed by now. I believe. I would hope so. I was texting with Alex, the SID for softball, a little bit earlier today, and they're doing well. So that's good, right? They got a lot of catching up to do with hydration and vitamins and extra sleep and rest and stretching, to get used to the travel, that long travel there. For some reason, the Atlantic Coast Conference has teams from the West Coast in them. There's a certain AD that we can thank for that. But hey, we don't have to talk about that. It's the school over in Fuquay Arena, as I like to say. But anyway, look, we got 4 people now. Look, if you have a Twitter, do us a favor. Go over to Hills on Franklin and retweet some of our tweets, because for some reason we're not able to stream on Twitter tonight, whereas actually we get most of our visitors from our viewers and streams come from mostly Twitter. So do us a favor. All right, Andrew, look, we got a lot to talk about tonight. Let's go ahead and jump in. Game 1, Friday. Sorry, that was Troy calling me. He's probably wondering why we're not live on Twitter. But go ahead and kick it off. Game 1, Virginia recap. UNC loses 13-3, 7-inning run rule. I was there by myself. It was not fun at all. I actually ended up leaving early. I only stayed for about an hour to an hour and a half. And I said, I'm out. And I made my way over to the Carolina softball game. So go ahead and jump in here for me. UNC loses 13-3 in game 1.
Yeah. So, we've had a ton of run rule games this year. I think this is, I know for a fact this is the first one that we've been on the wrong side. And I can say that I definitely do not like this side of the run rule. That was not enjoyable. Jason DeCaro, he's kind of the story here. He came in and he struggled. First two games for him against it was Indiana and ECU. He was virtually unhittable. I mean, he looked almost unstoppable. Lemoyne, we talked last week. They hit the fastball, but they didn't really have the ability to hit the off-speed stuff. This game was a total 180. This game, DeCaro, his fastball, he was getting some swings and misses, but they were really outside of a couple change-ups here and there that he threw that were really good. They were really getting to his off-speed stuff. So I mean, he only went 3 innings, 5 total runs, only 2 were earned, which takes me to the next point. The fielding was not good. The hitting was not good on really in all 3 aspects of the game. It was a rough night. But yeah, he's the main story. Really, the only positive from the plate that game was Owen Hall. He was 2 for 3 with an RBI. The only Tar Heel to have more than 1 hit. But 5 hits to Virginia's 13. Carolina had 3 errors. So that's one of those games that you just want to flush and forget about.
Yeah, totally. So talk to me a little bit about this. Any concern from Jason DeCaro here? Lemoyne hit his fastball really well. We kind of talked about that. I thought you had a really good point that was potentially, having to do with the weather, but they weren't able to really touch his off-speed stuff there. But, honestly, on the back end, I was a little concerned about that. Jason DeCaro is supposed to be the guy this year. We know he can do it, right? And then we see this game as well, and he struggles big time against UVA. Talk to me a little bit about that. Any concern right now about Jason DeCaro definitely, going into Cal?
Yeah, a little bit. We saw last year, he was the opening day starter last year too. And I think it was more Jake Knapp was just so incredible last year. It wasn't anything that DeCaro was bad for the reason why he was bumped out of that Friday spot. But I'm a little worried. I'll be honest. I think again, he's such a hard guy to read because whether he's giving up hit after hit after hit or he's getting strikeout after strikeout, he's got that same composure on the mound. So, I'm not going to be able to say, oh, I think it's in his head or look at his body language, but I will be honest. I'm a little concerned. I mean, do I think he'll get out of it? Yeah. I mean, Jason DeCaro is there's a reason why he's one of the projected top pitchers in this upcoming draft. But you'd be crazy not to say after the Lemoyne game and how they hit the fastball and the Virginia game, how they hit the off-speed stuff. You'd be crazy not to say you're at least a little bit concerned moving forward. So I'm honestly, though, really excited about this Cal game to see, can he have that bounce back game, or is it going to be a bit of another game where he's struggling a little bit with command and unable to put guys away?
Yeah, my hope is that he can, because we're definitely going to need him down the stretch here. Let's talk about game 2 briefly. This was, another loss here. UNC loses 9-2. Ryan Lynch comes in and goes for 4 innings, 5 ERA, 6 hits, 6 Ks, and 1 walk. Talk us a little bit through this game and what transpired throughout game 2.
Yeah, so Lynch ended up having 6 strikeouts, and in the first 2 innings, he had 5 strikeouts alone. But what Virginia did such a good job of in game 2, with Lynch especially, is they got his pitch count up. I mean, time and time again, even on the at-bats where he was getting strikeouts, it was 3-2 count. They'd foul off 2, 3, 4, 5 pitches. They were forcing Lynch, even when he got the Ks, to really work, and that got his pitch count up. And then we saw kind of, as he got into the 3rd or the 4th inning, they were able to finally get some runs across. So Lynch was really in good command early on, but with that pitch count climbing, it kind of spiraled once they got to the 4th inning. He left the game, bases loaded. Tom Chmielewski came in. I thought for a split second he was going to get out of it. He got a strikeout to start his outing, but then Virginia was just able to get a couple hits here. They did a fantastic job the entire series of getting hits with 2 strikes and with 2 outs. I mean, it seemed like almost every UVA big hit, every big run came in a situation where it was a 1-2 count or a 2-2 count, or we had 2 outs. And so that was just really frustrating because this is a game where Lynch had some good stuff. And if he's able to get that put away pitch earlier, if Chmielewski and these other guys are able to, get that strikeout or get that pop up when you have 2 strikes, I think Carolina could have won this game. And so that's what makes this game so frustrating.
Yeah, and also I'm not sure if you mentioned or not, I can't recall, but it was also a doubleheader, due to weather coming in on Sunday. So we had the Saturday and Sunday, and so it was a little disheartening, honestly.
And Carolina didn't get their first 1-2-3 inning of the entire series until the 8th inning. Boston Flannery came in, 2 innings pitched. He looked really good. Only allowed 1 hit, no runs. But that you never want your first 1-2-3 inning to be in the 8th inning of game 2. That's never a good sign for you in the series.
Yeah. Well, I mean, looking at game 3, UNC wins in a thriller 8-7. I think, there's a lot to take away from this game other than just a W in the win column. I think we saw that these players, right? They knew. So sometimes with transfers, right? A lot of times the coaching staff is still figuring out, right, who they are. Yeah, you can simulate all that all you want throughout, live action and BP or whatever it is throughout the off season. But once the games hit, you really start to turn out start to understand and see what type of players you really have. When you get down on the scoreboard, right? When you're not winning the game, are you going to kind of fold, or do you believe in the process? Are you going to chase pitches? Are you actually going to keep playing, right? Or are you going to fold and say, we're not going to win this, right? And so that's what I like from this game is that we saw a team, knowing that a potential sweep here by UVA was on the docket, that they fought all the way through 12 innings and were able to come away with a close 8-7 ball game. Give me some of your thoughts here. I think there's a lot to take away, definitely from the freshman side of things. The freshman pitcher that came in and did well, and then also freshman hitter that did well. That was also one of your MVPs for this week.
Yeah, I'll touch on both of those here in a few minutes when we talk about the MVPs. But I was there. We talked to each other together at game 2, and then I went home because the basketball game was that night against Duke, which wasn't great. Wasn't great. So I when I got home, I turned on the baseball game, and at the time it was 1-0. Gallagher had just hit a homer, just got it over the wall, and so I'm like, okay, I'm feeling okay. And then it was like in the blink of an eye, Virginia was up 5-1, and so I'm sitting there. I'm mad. I was already frustrated from game 2, and I'm like, we're about to get, swept, which at this time of year is no major cause for concern. I mean, we saw last year they lost the first series to Stanford. They lost the second series to Louisville. They go on and win the ACC tournament. So it's way too early to get, too high or too low after a series, but you don't, with a cross-country road trip coming up, you don't want to get swept in your first series, especially at home. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this is bad. Boaz only goes 3 innings, allows 4 runs on 6 hits. Then he leaves the game. The bullpen was already pretty stretched out because they had to pitch a lot game 1, a lot in game 2. And so I'm sitting there thinking, man, there's no chance Carolina's winning this game. And then Caden Glauber comes in and is like, hey, I got this, right? And he was huge. Matty Mateus came in after Glauber was pulled and was fantastic, had 5 strikeouts, only 1 earned run. And that 1 earned run was a bloop single that landed on the foul line. So outside of that 1 pitch, Matty Mateus was lights out, and Tyler Howe came up huge. We'll talk about him here in a minute as well. But 2 freshmen and then a senior captain was like, you know what, enough's enough. We got to salvage something from this weekend. And so I think it gave them a lot of confidence moving ahead into Cal this week. And that was just, for the fans, that was kind of, okay, let's back off the ledge. We're going to be okay.
You sure about that? You sure?
I think
no,
so.
I'm not talking about you be okay, but fans backing off the ledge.
Well, that's true. I will say so. We were there watching the game together, game 2. and we were chatting. And while we're chatting, I'm scrolling Twitter, and my mentions are, "This team's terrible. This team's so overrated." I'm getting DMs like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "Hey, I don't know, right? I'm frustrated too, right? So you're not helping me feel any better." I will say though, your daughter gave me a good laugh, a much needed laugh in game 2. So you had gone up to the concourse, and your wife and Asha had just come back from the concourse, and your wife said, "Yeah, we were like 5 feet away from Roy Williams." So I was telling them when I was a student at Carolina that a couple times a month I would be walking to class, and Roy Williams, I assume doing like his daily walk, his getting his exercise in, we'd cross paths. And I said, "Yeah, I was always, always nod and smile, but I was always too afraid to say anything." And Asha goes, "Why were you afraid to talk to Roy Williams? I've met a ton of the women's basketball players. I'm never afraid to talk to them." So it gave me a much needed laugh, because I was not in a good mood during that game 2 game at all.
Yeah. Yeah. She also was like, "Do you think we're going to win the World Series?" And I was like, "I don't know if we want to talk about that right now."
Yeah, maybe not right now.
Do you
I
want to
hope
go get
so, but
do you want to go get a funnel cake?
yeah, there you go. Let's go get some sugar.
Yeah, so let's talk about your MVPs from this weekend. I know that we put that out through an X article. So if you haven't seen that, you can go over to our Twitter page, Heels on Franklin, and it's through an X article. And you can kind of just, if you don't know what an X article is, basically like a website article or a blog or something like that, right? And you can go there and read, byline by byline each MVP and why Andrew chose those MVPs. So let's briefly talk about your 3 MVPs on the weekend there, Andrew.
Yeah, so Owen Hull's the first one. He's really the only guy at the plate that was consistent in all 3 games. He goes 5 for 12, hits 417, got his first homer of the season, a double, a walk, 3 RBIs. That was huge for Hull, because he's a guy that came over from George Mason and was an on-base machine last year at George Mason. And he's gotten on base a lot for UNC. He's walked a ton, but hitting wise, he's struggled so far this year. So it was really nice to see him kind of against a quality opponent be able to really put barrel to ball and get on base. But he was huge in game 3, down 5-1. He had a big hit. Cooper Nicholson had a big hit. Schaffner had a big hit. So, kudos to him, because without Owen Hull, there's no chance Carolina comes back and gets that game 3 win. But he was huge there.
Yep. Any of your others?
Yeah. So obviously, like I said, Caden Glauber. I've touched on this before. You don't see many freshmen who come in and just have the ability to not show any sense of being rattled. He comes in a 5-1 game.
Yeah.
Your back's kind of against the wall. You're trying to stave off getting swept. And he was out there like, "Guys, I got this." 5.1 innings pitched, only one earned run, 3 hits allowed, but 8 strikeouts. And this is a guy that, early on, we saw Forbes turn to him. I was kind of surprised how early he came out of the bullpen in the first few games. But Forbes obviously really trusts him, and we're seeing now why. This is a guy that seems like every time he goes out, he's getting better and better. His command's getting better. His off-speed stuff's looking better. He's always had a really good fastball, but his off-speed stuff was fantastic in game 3. So I think this is a guy, and I put out a tweet, during the game, that come ACC tournament time, come NCAA tournament time, this is a guy that, just like Ryan Lynch last year, I think he'll start some games for Carolina come those big moments, and I think he'll do well, similar to how Lynch did last year.
Yeah, I think he's definitely, a bright spot, going back to, talking about Caden here, is that, I think it goes to show that Forbes really liked what he saw in that first action, and he was able to put him out there really in the deep end, really in the fire there, and he proved himself again. And I also like to give you your flowers. The term that's used sometimes is that, we've started to see some tweets out there about him about, "Oh, wow, look at this." And, you called it, early on in the season. He was one of our freshmen that we highlighted, coming into this year, his fastball already reaching 96. So, hey, man, give you your flowers too, is to, your stuff. So that's good. Yeah, man.
Well, yeah. So the third MVP, again, from the same game, Tyler Howe, another freshman. This is a guy that I don't remember what the inning was, but earlier in the game, he took a pitch off the inside of his knee. And on replay, I'm like, man, there's no way he's staying in the game. He goes down. Trainer comes out. They look at him for like 2-3 minutes. He walks to first, obvious limp. I'm like, man, he cannot stay in this game. Like that. I'm just hoping he's okay. Like, go get that thing, x-rayed. And he was sorry if you heard anything. My daughter's banging at the door.
No.
So sorry.
Hey, she loves baseball.
Hey, she does. She's maybe trying to get in here and talk in the mic a little bit. But he stayed in the game. I don't know how, because it didn't look good, but he stayed in the game. And in the 9th inning, Virginia had taken a 6-5 lead. He hits his first homer as a Tar Heel. I think it was like the second pitch of the at-bat, second or third. Just hits a bomb. Was a no-doubter. And then in the 9th inning, he comes back and he gets the game-winning hit, the walk-off single. And what made that, I didn't realize this at the time, but what made that so nice is that Chris Pollard, who is Virginia's coach, he had brought in 5 infielders for that play. So Carolina had a guy on third, 1 out, and Howe comes up, and you had the second baseman, you had the first baseman, and it was almost like there was another second baseman there. So there was literally 3 guys between second base and first base, and he hits it right between those 2 guys playing second. And I mean, just barely gets it through. You see both of them dive and gets the win for the Tar Heels. So kudos to him, kudos to Glauber, kudos to Hull. All 3 of them were huge in giving Carolina some sort of momentum heading into this week.
Yeah, I mean, any final thoughts that you want to throw in here to close out this series against UVA? I think, UVA, looking at their season on what they've been able to do prior to coming into UNC is that they didn't do a lot of things that they were known to do, leading up, to this series. They had control issues on the mound, leading into this series. And honestly, they were dialed in all series long on the pitching side for the most part. And so, I really hate it, really, to drop 2 games to UVA, but anybody could, the saying, anybody can beat anybody when it comes to baseball or softball on Diamond Sports on any given day.
I mean, we saw Sacramento State go down to Baton Rouge and take 2 or 3 from LSU last week. Who saw that? And I think you've hit it right on the nail. It was frustrating. And I think for me, what was most frustrating was Carolina's approach, because we spent a lot of time last week talking about how Virginia does have. Sorry, my daughter's wanting to give me a hug.
Hey, baby girl. That's okay.
We're trying to get her in bed before we start, but all right, baby.
No, we're a family pod. Night.
Sorry.
No, don't say sorry.
Chris says good night. Good night,
Trevor's kids makes appearances.
All right, then I feel better then. But yeah, we talked last week about how Virginia seemingly had a lot of issues with their command. They walked a lot of guys coming into the series. They were second in the ACC behind only Boston College in walks allowed. And Carolina's approach to me was weird. It seemed like they were swinging first pitch a lot. And I get it. Sometimes the first pitch is the best one you're going to see, because pitchers want to start ahead. They want to get in that 0-1 count. But really all series long, I'm like, why are we swinging first pitch against a team that through 12 games so far this year has shown that they have an inclination to walk a lot of guys? So for me, that was the most frustrating thing. But I do think Virginia is better than what a lot of people were giving them credit for. I know they were ranked in 2 of the 3 polls that we've looked at, and that they weren't ranked in D1 baseball. But I saw a ton of tweets kind of after the Carolina series, and people were like, hey, this UVA team, there's a lot of questions going into the season, new coach, a lot of transfers, a lot of questions, but they're going to be better than people think. And it would not shock me if by end of the year, they're top 4 in the ACC as we head into the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I was listening to, I really appreciate what Inside Carolina does. They host Scott Forbes, weekly for his, 30-minute show, and he briefly touched on preseason rankings. And while he did say, I appreciate the people that put those out, but he talked a little bit further about how they don't really mean anything these days. Nobody really knows anything, coming into the transfer portal, right? I mean, I
That's
honestly
what makes
thought,
it so hard because you don't know what you got with so many of these especially in baseball when D2 and non-power 4 guys are coming up. You really never know what you have.
yeah, I mean, totally. So look, I'm just going to pause really quick. We appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Right now, it's a total of 4 because we cannot push to Twitter tonight for some reason. Usually, we have like 150 to 200 in here due to us streaming on Twitter, but for some reason, it's not our fault. It's StreamYard. It's either StreamYard or Twitter. We did get a notification prior to we started that there was some issues, going on. I don't know if you saw that, Andrew, but I had gotten that the past 3 streams as well, and everything had gone fine. So, not sure not sure what's going on. That just is going to mean there's going to be a lot more post work more than usual for me trying to get people to drive to these episodes, but it's all good. We're going to keep trucking along even if there's 1,000 people or no people here because we love Carolina. So look, let's go ahead. Are you ready to go ahead and transition over to going into Kyle?
Yeah, let's do it.
Gotcha. It's good to see Troy in here too. Go ahead and get his comment up. He said, fellas, he said, sorry, I'm late. Yep. Troy, if you listen back to this episode over on Spotify or YouTube, you're going to hear your ringing of the phone came through the stream, which is no big deal, but I thought it was kind of funny. I'd like to start this off by saying, Andrew, you dropped 2 games here. Carolina sits 14-3, and then that god awful one that we have to keep talking about and adding on to
Yep.
their totals here. But I think we're going to find out a lot about this team this weekend. I know it's a very long season, and I'll say too as well, it just feels like college baseball this year just feels off when it comes to the powerhouses that are usually to be and the mid majors. Yes, there's always that saying, a midweek game will get you, and they will.
Yep.
I don't know if you've been paying attention. I know you have, but it's been galore. Last
crazy.
week, this week, how many mid majors have been upsetting the powerhouses that be? I mean, I'm not throwing shade at NC State just because they're NC State, but I mean, they just got shut out by Elon.
Yeah, they've shut out by Elon. They lost to Lafayette. That was their first win of the season. And there was another midweek game that they shouldn't have lost that they did. LSU, we talked about they lost to Sacramento State in the series, but they had lost that same week. Last week, lost a midweek game to Northeastern.
And you had Charlotte beating UVA before they came into here. I mean, even on the softball side of things, I think NC State just lost to Charlotte, which Charlotte softball and baseball are doing really well this year. I think Charlotte scored like 5 or 7 runs in the 7 to come back to beat NC State. I know it sounds like I'm dogging on NC State, but I am very interested before we die. I just, when I talk about this, I am very intrigued by the Duke, and I think Duke and NC State are playing this weekend. Is that right in baseball, or am I just off?
You may be. I haven't checked, so you may be. I need to check.
I'll check after I ask my first question. But I feel like I saw that. But going back to kind of like what I said in the beginning, I think we're going to find a lot about these guys this weekend. Speaking with Carolina softball players and coaches, or head coach over there, I'm sure baseball would say the same thing. It's incredibly tough on these athletes and a program as a whole to travel across the country. A lot of people say, wow, that's such a privilege. You get to do that. Yeah, it seems fun through social media and posting, but, sleep, getting on schedule, having to take, I talked, like I said, in South Carolina, I talked with Scott Forbes, and I was listening to that, and he was really giving a lot of good, insights into that, of how, multivitamins, they'll be really on top of sleep, really on top of hydration. And I just really appreciate that he talked about that. I think it really goes into how tough it is to play a series across the country, and it's also the same for, Carolina softball as they're headed to Cal as well. So let's talk a little bit about, Carolina, goes to Cal. But let me finish that. Sorry, I meant to say too, like on top of that, I think we're going to find out what this team is really made of coming off a 2-game losing 2 games out of a series against UVA where there was so much expectations. And honestly, the Bosch was pretty well attended throughout all 3 games. It was some beautiful weather for baseball, definitely since they moved it to the Saturday for the doubleheader. It was actually a little hot. It was your time to wear your sandals and shorts.
Yeah,
Andrew,
I got it right this time.
that you wore on the cold day. So I think it's going to be interesting. How well, will this team, make a comeback, right?
Yeah. I'll say this, cross country road trips always scare me. And maybe I'm kind of projecting from basketball where we saw basketball go and lose to a Stanford team they probably should have beat, lose to a Cal team they definitely should have beat. But so maybe that's kind of some hanging over from that. But I'll be honest, this series worries me a little bit, not because I don't think Carolina is the better team. I do. And that's no knock on Cal. Cal's got some talent. They've got some hitters. They've got some really good pitchers. But Carolina is the better team here. But anytime you go, 5-6 hours from North Carolina to Cal, I've only been to California once, so I don't know. But anytime you go out over there, it just, like you said, that getting your body back right, it's tough. I know when I went out there for vacation, and it was tough for me. So I can imagine having to go from East Coast to West Coast and literally 2 days later having to go out there and play a baseball game. So that worries me. But again, this is a series that Carolina, if this was at home, if this was in the Bosch, I'd feel better. I still think Carolina, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would pick Carolina either way, at Cal or at home. But I would definitely feel much better if this was in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, Andrew, all good points. And I think, it's kind of funny that Troy is kind of bringing up some sore moments here. Ask basketball about their trip to California this year. It didn't go too well for Carolina basketball taking their trip out there. So, Troy, we appreciate you bringing that in here. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. They got so all these times that I have listed at the bottom of the screen right here, and also when we transition to softball, are all East Coast times. So we got Friday 9:00. Saturday at 5 and Sunday at 4 for the baseball team. All those times are Eastern time. Let's go ahead and dive in and talk about our head coach, Mike New. I believe he is in his 11th year over there at Cal. Let's get that up on over here. There we go. Andrew, kick it off for me.
Yeah, Mike New, like you said, 8th year at Cal, 11th year overall. He was at Pacific University before coming to Cal. I don't really know how he made his way to the West Coast because he's an East Coast guy. He played his college ball at Miami, and then he played a couple years in the majors. He's a pitcher, and he played for the Marlins and somebody else. But at Cal, he's been there since 2018. He's won 30 games 3 times. This is, he's a solid coach. This is a solid team. Against Carolina, Cal is 5-3 since 2002. I tried to find the full, since the first time they have ever played. And for whatever reason, pretty much every website I find that talks about head-to-head matchups, they only go back to 2002. So I don't know what that is about, but Carolina is 5-3 against Cal. They last met in 2013. That was 11-5 Carolina win. That game was played in Texas. It was one of those early season tournaments. But Cal this year is 13-3, 9-1 at home. They are unranked in any of the 3 polls that we usually focus on. But this is a solid team. I don't know if you've got it on another graphic, but they've beaten some decent teams. They beat Sacramento State, who we just talked about, just went down to Baton Rouge and upset 1-2-3 against LSU. They've played UC Irvine, who is consistently one of the better mid-majors in college baseball. They won that series. So they've played some solid teams, and no world beaters, nobody I think on par with a Virginia that Carolina just played, but they played some solid teams. And this is a team that, although they were picked to finish 15th out of 16 teams in the ACC preseason coaches poll, they're not a pushover. This is not a team that we can just kind of roll in there and say, roll out the balls, give us a bat, let's go to work. This is going to be tough. I really think there's only one team in the ACC that is just god awful. I'm not going to say who it is. You can go look at you can go look at the preseason coaches poll and get who I think that is. That's
Why
really
won't
the only.
you say it?
Well, okay, Boston College.
Well, I mean, they're about god awful and everything.
Yeah. Outside of hockey, they're pretty bad. But that's really the only team that I think if you just lined up and said, hey, let's play, it would be a no-brainer. That's an easy series win. Now watch me say that. I think we play BC. So watch that come back to bite me in the butt. But this is
real quick talking about BC. I think they should be close to getting their card taken away. How bad they are.
I think so too.
Across the whole,
yeah,
across every sport. Give me East Carolina over them.
I agree. I will say BC's got a really good women's lacrosse program, and I know hockey's good, but outside of that, I don't really know what they're good at. Basketball's awful. Football's awful. I'm on board with you. I know ECU basketball isn't anything special, but give me ECU over BC any day. but yeah, so outside of BC, there's no team in the ACC that I'm like, hey, this is an easy, we'll win at least 2 or 3 here.
Right.
So this is not, like I said, cross country. I think this could be a trap game or a trap series for Carolina, and they got to come, ready to roll, or Cal will win the series. Choice, y'all trying to get clipped. Yeah. Any Boston College fans out there, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm sorry. I know college baseball up there in the Northeast is tough when you got games in February and early March, but they're pretty bad. In fact, I was looking at the teams that have given up the most walks or given up the most hits or have the highest team ERA, and it was like across the board, BC. So that's the only team. Yeah, they're just bad. Let's be honest.
Just go back and look at one of their basketball games prior, like 10 minutes before tip-off.
Nobody's there.
Nobody's there.
And I like their coach, their basketball coach. So poor BC, but that's a tough place to win. Shout out Luke Kuechly, though. Shout out Luke Kuechly.
Right? Yeah. How is it fair that if someone wins a national championship in football out of the ACC, that they got to give BC a cut of it? Which I don't want to get.
Need it?
Yeah,
need it, but
someone can say the same thing from Carolina football.
That's true. That's very
anyway,
true.
I don't want to get too off topic, but Troy says elite knowledge and preparation. Keep pounding. He says I'm a Commanders fan, but I really liked Luke and how he played the game.
Look, BC football is pretty bad, but they've put some guys in the league. I mean, they've had a handful. You can go way back when to Doug Flutie, but they've put guys in the league, so they've got an impressive track record. They just don't have many wins to show for it.
Yep.
I don't know how we got talking about BC in a Cal conversation, but here we are.
Here we are. Look, we're 2 people strong, so we can talk about what we want.
Yeah.
But that's because we're not pushed to Twitter right now for some reason. Anyway. But look, let's go ahead and talk about our key players for this series. This is our opportunity that we try to give Carolina fans. This is our spotlight, right? That we try to help, Carolina fans learn players, right? That they need to be paying attention to. And I got to say, Andrew, well, we pick who's got the best average or whatever. So like the odds are in our favors, but I do like to go back and look like, did we hit those players that performed well? And we've done pretty well. But like I say, I just being honest, the odds are in our favor when we pick, the pitcher that's got the most wins or the batting average. I mean, but it makes sense to do that, right? We're not going to pick the 8-hole guy that's hitting, 220.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, I hope I'm wrong though. I don't want to get these guys, right, because if that means that they're doing well against the Hills. So, I want to highlight a guy and then watch him go 0 for 13 on the weekend. That's my hope, but so far it hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Like, when I'm at the Bosch and I'm sitting around people in baseball, and I think you know me by now, and Troy definitely knows. Like, I'm quick to talk about the podcast, like trying to get people. Like, man, I'm just like hustling, And so
I liked your flyer idea you had
Oh
on
yeah.
Saturday. I thought that, hey, let's do it, man.
Let's do it. Let's do it. But I'll get talking to a guy behind me, and there'll be a guy coming up. I'll be like, yeah, he's a first rounder. Talking about AJ from UVA, which slayed it this past weekend.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, wow, I didn't know who that is, and I mentioned another player, and like, oh wow, who's that is? So like, I'm someone that likes to know about the team. Prior to a series, so I know what to look for. And so this is our segment that we try our best to give Carolina fans a couple of names that, you should be on the lookout, and I say a couple, but Andrew's got 4 in here tonight for us. Let's go ahead and talk about the first one, a transfer from Clemson, catcher and DH. I mean, doing really well in the season, hitting 406 so far on the year. Go ahead, Andrew. What you got?
Yeah, Hideki Prather, like you said, 406, 500 OBP, so he's getting on base in half his at-bats. He's got good power. I mean, 5 homers, 8 doubles, 15 RBIs, but he's also got good plate discipline. This is a guy who has 10 walks as well. He's currently 4th in the ACC in hits and 2nd in doubles. So this is a guy that, if you hang one over the plate, he's going to take you deep. But this is also a guy that you've got to put it over the plate because he's not going to chase much. He's not going to strike out a ton, and he'll walk. So this is a guy that is going to kind of similar to a lot of the UVA hitters. He's going to be a headache, right? It's not going to be a guy that is coming up just swinging for the fences, and you can just hopefully blow a fastball by him. He'll make you work, but at the same time, if you make one mistake, he's taking you deep, or he's at least putting one in the gap and getting on second. So this is definitely a dangerous guy in the Cal lineup.
Yeah, good stuff. Let's go ahead and move through these pretty quickly. I'm not going to add much ad lib in between. First base, grad transfer, a D2 from San Francisco State. Go ahead, Andrew. What you got?
Yeah, Daniel Murillo, like I said, D2 guy from San Francisco State. We've seen Carolina have a lot of success with guys from lower levels. Alex Madera, Tyson Bass, Anthony D'Onofrio. So this is kind of their version of one of those guys. He's a first baseman hitting 408, 4 homers, 6 doubles. So just like Prather, he's a guy that has some power, but he also has speed. He's got 2 triples. I know last I checked, Jake Schaffner is leading the entire NCAA with 4. So, triples, it's hard to hit a triple. And so he's got 2. It's still early in the season. So he's a guy with both power and speed. He was a D2 second team All-American last year, and he currently leads the ACC in hits. So this is a guy who's going to get on base. He doesn't walk a ton. So unlike Prather, he's not going to, he might chase some pitches here and there. So maybe this is a guy that you can get chasing a slider, like, McDuffie's signature slider, or, Caden Glauber's changeup, or DeCaro's changeup, something like that. So this is a guy that you might want to hit with some off-speed stuff to get him to chase. But if not, man, he can get on base, and he's done so at a high clip so far this year.
Yeah, so our next one is not Carter French, but Jacob French.
Yeah,
a utility player. I mean, another guy hitting 348 so far this season, a 4.29 on base percentage with 2 home runs, 6 doubles, and 14 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases too. So you better watch out. I mean, I know when you look at while he doesn't have the highest average, out of the other one, he just looks like a ball player to me. Some of those guys, how they just carry themselves, like Vance Honeycutt, Luke Stevenson, right? They all look like ball players, right? When they walked off the bus. It kind of goes back to whether they're a starter or not in football, you want the biggest man walking off the bus first, right? So that's kind of how I'm going. Like, this is a guy that just looks like a straight up dog when he's on the field. So anything else you want to talk about with him, Andrew?
Yeah, with French, I don't watch a lot of Cal baseball outside of when they're playing Carolina, but this was a guy who in the ACC tournament last year, I was like, man, this guy's impressive. And so I didn't realize until I was researching for this episode just how good of a season he had last year for Cal. He led Cal in batting average at 380. He led him in triples. He led them in on-base percentage. He was second in the team in hits and total bases and doubles. So this is a guy, he was third team All-ACC last year, and this is a guy that just was doing everything for Cal last year. Definitely their best player. And I vividly remember watching the ACC tournament last year and being like, man, I never heard of this guy before because Carolina didn't play Cal last year, and being really impressed. So I wasn't sure at the time whether he was a junior, senior, what he was. So when I saw his name when I was going through their roster, I'm like, man, he's definitely one of those guys that we got to keep an eye out for because he gets on base a lot. Good blend, like Mario, a good blend of speed and power, and he's gonna cause chaos for Carolina pitchers. So really, all three of these guys are guys that are going to give Carolina headaches, and we got to be ready, from the mound to attack them.
Yeah, so our last one is a right-hand pitcher that is most likely going to be their Friday starter. A right-hand pitcher here. What you got here, Andrew?
Yeah, so he's only 1-2 on the season, but if you go back and look at his numbers, he's really not gotten much run support in his starts. 1.89 ERA, but what really pops out to me is that strikeout to walk ratio, 23 strikeouts to 3 walks. So this is a guy that's not going to give you many free passes. He's not going to put many guys on base. Opponents are hitting 191 against him, and his strikeouts per 9 is just shy of 11. So a guy that he's going to make on Friday, more than likely, he's going to make Carolina batters have to work for it. We saw yesterday Carolina was in a dogfight with Bucknell, and then in the 7th inning, Bucknell just started. They were hitting guys, they were walking a ton of guys, tons of free passes. We're not going to see that this weekend with De La Torre. He's a guy that when you get on base, it's more than likely going to be a hit, and you're going to have to earn it. So Carolina batters have their work cut out for them on Friday for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. 1-2 there on the year for him, record wise, but a 1.89 ERA. That's rather low for a 1-2 record.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else you want to kind of touch on as we wrap up our preview for Carolina going to Cal?
Yeah. So, Cal's, they got a good pitching staff. I almost threw up a 5th one, but I was like, man, we already got 4. But they have a reliever. His name is yeah, you're welcome. His name is escaping me right now, but he's really good. I mean, ERA is in the ones, but they're 4th in the ACC in team ERA, 3.22. UNC is right behind them, 5th at 3.33. And coming into the season, a lot of experts kind of had Carolina as one of, if not the best pitching staff in the ACC. So
we'll see.
Yeah, and I still think they can be that. Like, don't get me wrong, but for Cal to be ahead of them right now shows you how impressive their pitching staff is. Opponents are hitting 219 against them. That ranks 6th in the ACC. They don't walk much, so they lead they're set first. Yeah, they're tied with, I think, Georgia Tech for 1st in the conference in doubles. They're not going to walk a lot, so hopefully Carolina can get them chasing some pitches. Like I said, maybe that McDuffie signature slider in the dirt can get a few guys chasing. They're last in the ACC in walks at 57, and they have 132 strikeouts on the season. So, unlike Virginia, who had a decent, they walked at a decent clip, Cal's the complete opposite. But Carolina is going to have to just pump that strike zone, fill it up, and then when you got a 2-strike count, maybe throw something outside and get a guy to chase, because I think that's where you're going to have a chance to really get some of these solid hitters out.
Yeah, I mean that we're basically going to have to do to them what UVA did to us. They pumped that strike zone.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was shocked because we know UVA coming into the series walked a lot of guys, and I was just blown away. It seemed like almost every at bat Carolina was in an 0-2 count, a 1-2 count. They did a fantastic job of, just like you said, filling up that strike zone.
Yeah, I would hope, looking at the history of, is it Mike New? Did I get that right?
New. Yeah, I double checked the pronunciation. It's New.
Mike New there being the coach. He was I can't recall if we mentioned it early on, but he was the pitching coach at Cal prior to going to Pacific to be the head coach, and then finally came back to Cal. So I would hope that they would have a strong pitching staff, if he was the pitching coach or, a pitcher in the majors, that being his main thing, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing I want to kind of touch on, it's not really Cal related, but I threw this up in the notes. is as I'm clicking through the ACC's website they do a really good job of making it where you can sort and kind of figure out, who leads in what category, individual categories, team categories. And so I got to just kind of clicking around, and I didn't realize, well, I mean, I kind of realized it, but at the same time, I was like, man, Carolina has not stolen many bases this year. They've stolen 12 bases on 17 attempts. And I'll be honest with you, coming into the season, that was something that I thought they would hang their hat on, similar to last year. We saw last year, it seemed like every time Kane Kepley got on base, he was going to try for second, or he was sometimes going to try for third. And so I was expecting with Owen Hull and his speed, with Jake Schaffner and his speed, that, hey, this team, they get on base, they're going to be a headache for opposing pitchers. And I'll be honest, I've really been a little disappointed in how few attempts they have. 17. Last year they had 109 attempts. So I haven't done the math to see like what we're on pace for, but it just seemed like last year, especially with Kepley, they were trying to really rattle pitchers on the base paths a lot more. So something I'd like to see if Carolina gets on base, especially a team like Cal with some really good pitchers that don't walk a ton of guys, man, try to get to second, bat a guy over, sack fly, get him home. I'm really hoping we see more stolen base attempts moving forward.
Yeah, look, good to see Rev in here. Look, what an awesome memory. I thought since Chris was talking about us being smaller that we'd be bandits on the bases. I think that's pretty much what he means there. But remember, I think in our first episode, I had done some deep research, and the ACC compared to the SEC, and then between Duke State and Carolina, the weight and height differences of players. What was it? Mississippi State? Which team was that in the SEC that was just massive?
It was either A&M maybe?
Yeah, Texas A&M. I think average
Tennessee was pretty big too.
Yeah, average player was like what, 208 or something.
They're huge, yeah. But yeah, it's I've been frustrated. I mean, Hull, I think it had 42 stolen bases at George Mason last year, and it just seems like they're not attempting many. So if I was able to talk to Scott Forbes, that'd probably be my first question, because I don't understand it.
Well, maybe here shortly, one day you'll be able to talk to him.
I hope so.
We're working on that. All right, so let's go ahead and transition over to Carolina softball. Look, taking on Cal as well this weekend with a game Friday at 5, Saturday at 5, and Sunday at 3. I know we got a couple of people, trickling in here late. We apologize that we're not over on Twitter, but our streaming service that we use, for some reason, I think it's actually an X issue, was not able to push over our stream to X tonight, which unfortunately that's where we get most of our viewers from. So we appreciate everybody being here and dropping comments. Do us a favor, when you do see this posted on Twitter, do us a favor and get us a retweet and a comment in and a like. It really goes a long way, and especially for this one this week with it being failed going to Twitter. We're missing out on a lot of viewership tonight. And Alex and I almost said Alex, I apologize. Andrew does a lot of hard work prior to these, and then I do all the graphics. And
I'll say you do too. You put in a lot of work too
and stuff. I know. I'm not gonna lie. I saw 4 highlight players. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I try to keep it at 3, and I was like, man, I got to put this picture in here too.
Yeah, it's all good. But let's go ahead and talk about softball. Unfortunately, just like baseball, they go 1-2 on the weekend against UVA, and let's kind of get some of the stuff out of the way before we talk about the one player, that really deserves a lot to be talked about. It seems like she's all over everywhere, right? All over the major publications, which is really great to see for Carolina. Andrew, where do you want to start here? Game 1, UNC loses 7-3. Emily Leggett stayed hot, going 2 for 4 with the RBI single. Sanaa Thompson and Reagan Jennings, which Reagan Jennings, a lot of people don't know, she's the one that transferred over from the national championship team and in Texas Tech. Texas Tech won that.
Runner-ups.
Runner-ups.
Texas won it.
Yeah. She wasn't the main starter there at second base, but she did get a lot of burn. And I actually went back and looked at her her stats from the national championship, and she had gotten some big at bats throughout the national championship series. So she was a great get in the transfer portal. Kendall Frost, coming into this weekend, this whole weekend just didn't seem like herself. And here, anything we do at Heels on Franklin, the Tar Pit podcast, Heels on the Diamond, we say it all the time. We're a family player first podcast. We do give our analysis and talk about some of those things that we just see, and right. And so Kendall Frost, she had her first loss on the season, which was set. Now she's 7-1 on the season, but even in relief work this weekend, she just didn't seem like she was herself. And thanks to Carolina and Alex, the SID there, we're now media credentialed for Carolina softball, and we're able to go to the post games. And we talked about that a little bit, and what it's going to take for her to bounce back. And she's got that fight, that grit, and they're going to need her they're going to need her probably in this series for sure. Like I said, losing this first game, she drops to the now 7-1, which is still, fantastic. Carolina softball in game one just fell short in a lot of areas, with leaving 6 runners on base in game one. Andrew, any thoughts here as Carolina falls in game one 7-3 to UVA?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those games, and you have those kind of like game one for the baseball team where things just don't really go your way. They left 6 runners on base, but this was a series. I know we're talking mainly about game one right now, but this was a series where you're excited because you get your first ranked win in 4 seasons, but at the same time, you're kicking yourself because you're like, man, like in game 3, we kind of gave it away. We could have very easily won the series against a ranked Virginia team. So I think this is one of those series where they look back at it with a lot of pride, but at the same time, you're like, God, if we could have just done 1 or 2 other things, we could have won the series. But regardless, either way, it gives you a lot of momentum moving forward outside of game 1, where outside of, Emily Leggett, who is an absolute, I'm convinced she's a robot. I don't think she's human. She's a machine. Outside of that, it was a tough game for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, talking about Emily Leggett being a robot, and I'll talk about it at the end, but I had an opportunity to sit down with her on Monday, and she is definitely not a robot. She's very quiet she's very quiet at games, it seems like, other than like when she hits the home runs and she's coming in the home plate. I don't know if you've seen, I probably shouldn't do it on the pod, but there's like one where she's like, with her tongue out.
I've seen that one, yeah.
And there's one where she's like, yeah. But in person, dude, she's like, I don't know. If I just had, I don't know, it's like old school, like just a G, like
yeah,
super chill,
quiet confidence,
super chill, super humble, like just like, yeah, this is life. I love ball. I love people. Let's talk about it. But I was there for game 2 and also for game 3. Game 2, I wanted to go back to this comment. Caleb said I talked about us being media credentialed now for Carolina softball. He says it's about to be a softball pod with a baseball review. Let's just say that we are a show that covers both equally.
We're a Diamond Sports pod.
Yep, we're a Diamond Sports pod. There you go. Hey, we are working on being credentialed for baseball. So, but we're a small grassroots, so we're working our way. All I know is if you're a SID and you might be listening to this show, if you give us an opportunity, you're going to get what we are giving Carolina softball.
Yeah.
And we Chris, will do.
Kudos to you. So I don't mean to interrupt, but man, you've done, okay. Like I've gone back and watched the post game pressers that you've done with Coach Smith and with some of the players, and your questions are fantastic. I mean, I listen to a lot of NFL and other college sports pressers, and I'm like, man, some of these questions are just stupid. And so far, your questions have been on point. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just to be a little bit like transparent, like game 1 Friday, I had the opportunity to go in and ask questions, and I decided not to. I was like, I just want to get the vibe of how it all works. I'd never done it before. And because we're kind of like this pod, I feel like we're like, since we're starting to get, media credentialed now. I feel like we're late bloomers to it, right? So we're still learning, and we admit that, right? And so I was like, I'm not going to ask any questions. And the boys know me that, like, I do have that sometimes, but then when I'm put in this situation, I'm kind of like, F it. Let's do it. Like, we're meant for this. Like, you know, we are meant for this. Like, trust yourself and your gifts. And so I was in there and I just looked at Alex and I was like, hey, I have questions. Is that cool? He was like, yeah, totally. So I was just like, off the
yourself,
cuff.
What would Emily Leggett do? We talked about quiet confidence. What would she do? She would probably ask questions. So
yeah,
I'm glad you did it.
Yeah, we should get bracelets made now. What would Emily look? We're really like Caleb, I think, or I can't remember which one was like Legoat. And I've talked to Emily and Alex about that, and I'm really trying to see if they will do NIL shirts with Legoat on them with some like awesome design. I think it can happen if we keep pushing for it. But, you know, so I appreciate that, Andrew. You know, we went in there and asked our questions and came through. And kind of funny, game 3, you know, it was a super tough loss, which we're going to get to in a minute. And there was only two other reporters there that night, and it was just me. And I had like 12 questions. I don't know. I'm still learning, right? And I go back to them. I'm watching, you know, other people that do this stuff to learn, right? Because no one's teaching us, right? We're just like, I love Hubert's pressers, like, you know, 10 minutes, right? I think coaches was like 15 because I asked Alex, I whispered, I was like, hey, I got 8 questions. Is that okay? He was like, yeah, go. He's like, I have the power to say no when it's enough. So I was like, all right, I'm going for it. And coach was awesome. She was just like, you know, ask away. So it was definitely good. But game 2, you know, UNC, you know, goes into 8 innings, winning 11-9. UVA held a 7-1 lead. And I think that game just really shows that this team really does believe that they have the ability to play with anybody it is. And I know that there's been some people hard on this pitching staff, definitely as we've started to get or this pitching group as we've started to get into ACC play. But you really have to look at the whole picture here. You know, one of the main pitchers that came in was her first time pitching all year because she was working her way back from injury, and she looked fantastic. I don't know if it's in the notes there for game 2 who that pitcher was. I'm drawing a blank, and she looked fantastic. She just shut them down. And then the pitcher with the last name is it Kenna? We're still learning. Kenna Davis.
Yeah, Kenna Ray.
Yeah, no, that's Kenna Ray.
No, you're right. I'm yeah.
Kina Davis. She's a
Is it Kiana?
Kiana, yes, Kiana Davis, I believe it is. Sorry, we're still learning the roster and
hey, it took us 3 episodes to get Colin Heineck's name right. So
hey, that's right. She's a true freshman, had not pitched at all, and coach threw her in the fire in game 2 and shut them down. It was very impressive. And coach talked about it in the post game. That was one of my questions about, you know, somebody had asked a question. I said, I know you've already covered it, coach, but I'd like to go back to it because I want, you know, listeners to really understand how big of that moment was, you know, for her. And I saw her after the game and got to congratulate her, and she was super giddy. She was standing with her family. It's just really cool moment to see. And so they've got some talent, you know, in that pitching room. I think it's going to come along as further as the season goes along and as they continue to get healthy. But I mean, that was a thrilling series. You know, Emily Leggett, you know, just hits a 3-run walk-off homer, her 3rd homer of that game to win it. I mean, she's just a straight dog. You know, she finished with 3 for 4, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs. She's the first UNC player to hit 3 homers in a game since Haley Dickey in 2010. This is the only 3rd time it's happened in program history. And I talked about this in my interview with her, my sit down that's going to air Sunday night at 9:00. And looking back at that at bat I wish that everybody could be there in person to watch that at bat, but it was literally like you were watching a professional ball player just trying to get the pitch that they wanted.
She fouled off a ton of pitches. Yeah.
Fouled off. And I talked to her about that. You know, what was your approach? She said there was I can't remember how she worded it, but she went into their bat saying that there was no other course of action other than hitting a home run and winning the game. There was like no other option. I will win this at bat is basically what she said. She just kept fouling off. And like listen to her talk about how lefties usually rise this way and how righties rise that way and drop that way. I mean, it was like science. I was like, this is awesome. So I can't wait for y'all to, be able to hear that interview. And then, it was actually, it was Coach's first ranked win since, being at Carolina. So that was pretty cool to see. And it was also, UNC's first ranked win in 4 years. So, Coach Smith and Coach Lyon, that's Coach Smith's husband. He coaches third base, and this whole coaching staff is just doing an amazing job getting them back on track. And then unfortunately in game 3, it was just a heartbreaker. It was just a heartbreaker, 8 innings there, going into the 7th, Carolina was up by 5, I believe it was. Virginia scores 5 runs to tie it up, and then UVA takes it in the 8th inning. And really what it came down to, there was some people online talking about how it was pitching's fault, but really what it came down just to mental collapses in the infield of errors. And I think this is just a good opportunity for us to, this isn't me taking it easy on them, right? But it's really a good opportunity for us to look and say like, hey, these are humans as well, right? Because this pitcher, not this pitcher, but the shortstop, I was actually standing beside her dad when she made a few errors that were very crucial and routine plays, I think, in that inning alone or in back-to-back innings. And it really like hurt me to watch him like go through that in that moment. And I didn't even know this because we're still learning the roster, but she's a freshman out there playing. And I talked with Coach about that, about how she's a freshman. How are you going to, get her to come back as y'all travel to Cal? And she says she's learning. She's going to, we're all going to have mistakes, but it's how we come back from them. And it was really just some key mistakes that she made in those final moments. So, but she's been solid, throughout the most year. Throughout the year.
I can imagine as a parent, we both have kids, but they're younger. I can imagine as a parent, like standing there just because you're your kid's biggest fan and not being able to help. I know, like for me, my daughter's only 4, but when something goes wrong, dad's there, dad can help, mom's there, mom can help. But in that situation, it's got to be a helpless feeling. And so, but we saw, it's how you respond, it's how you bounce back. We saw it last year. Jackson Vanderbrake in the supers against Arizona had a huge error that ultimately kind of cost Carolina the game. And you got to accept it. I messed up. Move on. I know that ended his season, his Tar Heel career last year, but you got to move on to the next thing. And what can you take from that and learn from that? And that's something that I think her, the down the road she can learn from that, and it can benefit her in the long run.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's look at Emily Leggett, right, on the weekend. Even though, Carolina softball doesn't take the series here, I think we can hang on our hats that they, got a ranked win here in this series, and they were very close to winning the series, in that third game. Emily Leggett on the weekend goes 8 for 13, 5 home runs, 15 RBIs, and 4 walks. And just a side note, she's only struck out once this year.
Yeah, I saw your tweet about that. That's incredible.
Just incredible. Not only is she potentially an ACC Player of the Year, which I think is going to be very, very hard to earn with the girl with the player down in FSU this year that plays at shortstop. She's very awesome as well. But I think there's a potential that could have the Triple Crown this year if she continues to on this track.
As of right now, she would have it. And I know it's super early in the season. We're like, what, a third of the way done, if that. But if the season ended today, she would have the Triple Crown.
Yeah. So look, a potential crash out moment, Andrew. Talk about your last little note that we had here.
Yeah. So on my, what is that, 7th page of notes? Yeah. On the last page, I've got this question, and I'm just going to read it verbatim how I've got it. It says, I need an explanation for why Leggett was named, and I put national in all caps, National Player of the Week by Softball America, Sports Illustrated, D1 Softball, and NFCA. So 4 different groups named her Player of the Week, yet she was not ACC Player of the Week. I need somebody to explain that to me like I'm 2 years old, because how can you be National Player of the Week and not be your conference player? Whoever votes for this,
It's the SIDs.
Okay, well, Alex, if
He
you
can't
hear
vote.
this,
He can't vote for his own player.
I figured
by the
he
way.
probably can't, but I'm sure he knows who is out there voting. And I got a bone to pick with your fellow SIDs, because that's unacceptable. I mean, anytime you go 8 for 13 with 5 bombs and 15 RBIs and you walk 4 times, what else do you have to do? The only thing I can possibly think of is that maybe because Carolina didn't win the series, they went elsewhere. That's the only logical explanation I can get. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that, hey, maybe if Carolina had held on to 1 game 3, she'd get it. But hey, sometimes exceptions need to be made. This is one of those exceptions. She should have been ACC Player of the Week. I keep saying year, I meant week.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And I know this feels like a cop-out, and some other fan base would be like, oh, you're crying or whatever. You know how like some of those burners will talk about. But I really think that her not winning ACC Player of the Week comes down to the name that was on the jersey.
Yeah. It's not a, and we understand what Carolina basketball is. We know that they get the benefit of the doubt sometimes. So we get that. But I think you're right. She's not from a school that is a consistent powerhouse in softball. At least not yet. I think we can get there. But I think you're right. I think it being Carolina as opposed to some of these other schools is a big reason why.
Yeah, and going back to the ACC Player of the Week was the player from FSU, the shortstop, as well that won ACC Player of the Week. Even if you go follow Coach Lyon on Twitter, that he's also the hitting coach, third base coach. He actually put out a tweet that was, I think it was like, shame on you, SIDs, and I was like, all right. I texted Alex and was like, he's not ducking any smoke.
He's not happy.
So, but I mean, you're right. If you win 4 publication awards like that for Player of the Week nationally, how do you not win your conference?
Yeah, that would be like winning. That would almost be like in basketball, the National Player of the Year not winning ACC Player of the Year. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Or winning the MVP in football, not making the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Mendoza winning Heisman, but not being first team All American or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I wanted to just mention 2 things before we close here in 4 minutes. Is that Sunday night, 9:00, my sit down with Emily Leggett will hopefully be on Twitter. If it streams, I'm going to test it tomorrow, but it will definitely be on YouTube. So definitely want you guys to check that out. It was an awesome time. We spent about an hour together. We talked about family. Her brother's in the military right now, so we talked about what that's like and their connection and family. And I was able to spend about 30 minutes with her mom and dad prior to this interview, learning more about Emily, learning more about her journey. We talked about the transfer portal as well. Her coming from Virginia Tech. She said Virginia Tech had her name in the portal 10 minutes after she submitted her papers. And she figured it out because she got like 3 calls and 3 texts after those 10 minutes for schools hitting her up. And when it was all said and done, I think she had like 18 schools reach out to her. So we're lucky to have Emily Leggett at Carolina. And she's not only an amazing player on the field, but she's an amazing player off the field. And I just really had a great time. Again, thanks to Alex over there at Carolina and Coach Smith for giving us the opportunity to sit down with their players for the rest of this season. And our heart behind that is really giving them a spotlight, the one that they so deserve. Also, I want to mention really quick is that next week's Coach's Show, which usually airs on Mondays at 8 o'clock, is going to be airing on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Unfortunately, it's not airing on Monday because they will be traveling back from California on Monday. So I believe that it's the same for baseball as well, I think, because I'm pretty sure they flew down there together on the same plane this trip. So, again, Coach's Show is not airing on Monday due to their travel. It's airing on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. So that means next week's show for Heels on the Diamond is going to be on Tuesday at 8:30. So
hopefully Twitter's working this time, Elon. Get it right.
Get it together, right? And you got to get the spamming in my message box completely under control. Please get that figured out. But anyway, like I said, Tuesday, 8:30, Heels on the Diamond. And then Wednesday, 8 o'clock, Coach's Show. It's going to be a good time. Stay tuned for more information. Always do us a favor like you have. Be sure to like, subscribe. Also, go on and follow us over on Spotify if you can, and leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way. This episode will also be over on Spotify. We hope that you will tune into these games, which I believe are going to be on the not ESPN network. Well, it is on the ESPN network, but the ACC network, probably more than likely on Extra, I would think. So if you don't have that package, be sure to get that package. If you're looking for football coverage, be sure to check us out over at the Tar Pit Podcast, also presented by Hills on Franklin. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube and also on Spotify. Currently, what we're doing right now is, we've gone through the portal and just breaking individual player up and loading them up so you can easily digest those. And also stay on the lookout. We're building out a website currently, Hills on Franklin website, that will be featured an article space where, the guys can start writing, feature articles, kind of like what we do with our X articles, but living on a website. So hopefully we can start getting some sponsors and growing this thing even more. I know Troy and Trevor are looking forward to another episode soon for the Tar Pit Podcast. They're working on some things behind the scenes. So we're looking forward to being with you guys. Thanks for everybody tuning in tonight. Just want to give a shout out to Caleb. As always, we thank you for being here. Rev, thank you for being here. And Troy, keeping the comments hot. Caleb says, go Heels. Troy says, great episode, fellas. We'll definitely tune in to sit down with Emily, Chris, go Heels. I do want to mention, unfortunately, the internet went out twice during that episode. So there's 2 little spots in my sit down missing. So I got to figure out how to edit that. But Troy calls me the wizard. So I will figure it out. So it's all good. But look, we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And as always, go Heels.
Go Heels.
Thank you for listening to Heels on the Diamond, presented by Heels on Franklin. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to like it, drop a comment, and share it with another Carolina fan. That support goes a long way as we continue to grow. You can find all episodes of Heels on the Diamond on the Heels on Franklin YouTube channel and on Spotify. So whether you like watching or listening, we've got you covered. If you're looking for Carolina football coverage, be sure to check out the Tar Pit Podcast, which you can also find on the Heels on Franklin YouTube channel and on Spotify. You can also find us on X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search Heels on Franklin and you're in. Until next time, go Heels.